I came before you here to talk about a new series that was being launched at the Connected Systems Institute, focused on bringing together industry leaders in a format that they could offer their stories and their inspirations to audiences that eager to receive and hear and learn from people who've gone before. And so today, I'm honored to bring before you here a panel of speakers that stepped forward and volunteered their stories. In some respects, some of them actually were volunteered for them, just based on what I know about their history. But before we get to them, I just want to introduce the core planning team again to this group and let you know that the effort that we have put together to bring this series to you is the result of conversations from people who, from really all walks of life and all backgrounds. And so I'm excited that today we'll enjoy reflections from women in different phases of their career. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, so I won't dwell on the introductions here. But I also want to make sure that this is a very conversational and interactive session, because we're not really here to lecture at you. We're here to share knowledge, share experiences, and hopefully start a dialogue of conversation that will enrich your own experience with the session and leave you with some real concrete tools that you can use in your own career. So I'm going to ask each of our speakers to bring on their cameras, and the rest of us can stay on mute, and we'll start our panel discussion this morning. So our first speaker is Nile Pierre. Nile, I came to know through her sister, Lacy. Actually, I was very impressed with these young women and what they've done in their career, and they're very representative of the early beginning part of someone just embarking out of school. So now I will turn the session over to you, and we'd love to hear your story.
Sure, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So as Mary shared, my name is Nile Pierre. I'm a recent graduate of Tulane University, which is in New Orleans, class of 2020. And I was a Posse Foundation scholar there, and I studied political economics and Latin American studies. And so I had some interest initially kind of all over the place. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to get more involved in politics and that kind of stuff. So I was really someone, I never changed my majors per se, but I was always changing my mind about what I wanted to do with my degrees. And then my sister, who Mary mentioned, Lacy, is a consultant, and I talk to my sister all the time. I was always telling her, I don't know what I want to do, blah, blah. And that kind of fits in really well with the job I have now. I'm an analyst at Accenture, and the great thing about consulting I've learned is that it's a blessing and the curse, but the blessing is that you can really get a lot of experience in diverse industries and really find out what your niche is, but then a curse because, maybe you fall in love with something and then the project ends and it's like, great. But it's a great place, I think, to start your career and get a strong foundation and get a lot of experience. So happy to speak with you all today.
Thank you, Niall. Thank you for sharing. If you could offer a word of advice for anyone just starting their college journey, what would it be?
I think I would tell someone, so I think the whole time I was in college, I was so worried, like, oh, I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going to get a job. Always worried about trying to get a resume, trying to get experience, trying to get the right internship. And I realized that, yes, you need to try, but also you should enjoy the things that you're learning and take up something that you enjoy, not just because you think it'll be good on your resume. Take that class that maybe doesn't directly relate to, what you want to graduate in, but it's something that interests you, because I feel like I should have done that more. And if I would have, I probably would still end up in the same place I am now. So definitely don't stress yourself out too much. Everything will work out for you.
I totally agree. I think if you just go after things and follow your energy and your passion. It will take you in really fantastic place. One last question now before we move on to our next panelist.
Yeah, sure.
Sister Lacy, if you could say one thing to your younger self, what would it be?
It's so weird because I am pretty young, so I'm trying to think even younger than I am now. I'm 22. So maybe when I was even younger than I am now, I would have told myself that whatever you think that you have your mind made up on what you're going to be and what you're going to do, you're not going to do that. So just be open to change and just know that just because you think like, yes, this is what I'm going to do, this is my destiny, like whatever, like just know that things change in life and you have to be okay with the change, and change is a welcome thing. So that's something I would tell maybe like my 18-year-old self.
I love that, Niall. And actually, I think we're going to hear that as a recurring theme, right? A number of the professionals who were involved in planning this, to a person almost, they said, you need to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if you're too comfortable, you're not growing. So I think you'll hear that through the conversation today. So thank you for sharing. And when we get to the dialogue session at the end, please continue. I love it. So I'd like to bring on your sister, Lacy. She was the first Ms. Pierre that I got to know, actually, at a conference. Lacy and I were participating in the Women in Reliability and Asset Management meetings at an engineering conference, and she just had such a great story. So Lacy, can you come forward and share your story with the group?
Sure. Just to confirm, can everybody hear me on the call?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Amazing. So I'm in the library, a little casual, but again, Mary, thank you so much for inviting me to join. I'm so glad that our paths crossed and that we connected. Also just great to be here with everybody today. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be brief about my background, and Mary, feel free to dig in wherever it makes sense. I graduated from the University of California, Merced in 2014 with a degree in environmental engineering. Similar to Niall, I thought I was going to do certain things, and thankfully my career kind of pivoted to a place where I'm really happy. After school, I worked at an energy engineering startup for a year based in Southern California. I really liked that work and kind of thought that I outgrew being at that startup environment, and then pivoted to consulting. So I was at Accenture for 5 years, mostly doing supply chain operations and sustainability consulting. I really enjoyed my career at Accenture and consulting, got to do multiple things as Niall shared, and really found my niche in the reliability and maintenance and kind of supply chain operations space. Once I made manager, and one of my goals was to make that as fast as possible, and I actually was one of the first in my start group to make manager, I kind of then took an opportunity to pause and reflect and decided to go to business school. I thought that it was a really great time for me to take a break. I realized that my career is a marathon and not a sprint, and thought that it would be a great time for me to take a break and attend business school. So right now I'm a full-time MBA. I'm on leave from Accenture. I'm at Columbia Business School now. One of my goals is to continue to deepen my expertise in operations and supply chain, but also be able to complement that with a bit of finance skills, and also just expand my network across multiple disciplines. So I'm super excited about the opportunity to be in the MBA experience, and had an amazing career at Accenture that has really positioned me well to excel in this environment. And I see myself just really being able to have a deeper understanding because I've had these 5 years in industry. So the MBA is a lot more applicable now, and the things that I have learned in consulting have proved to be extremely valuable.
Well, you've certainly earned it, Lacy, every
Thank
step
you.
of the way, from what I've seen you do in the field.
Thank you.
So, same questions though, it's hard going back to school, right?
Yes.
The issues you had to deal with.
Yeah, so I think just speaking candidly, 2 years of not having a salary was a bit of a decision to make. So that is something that I thought about, but ultimately decided that getting an advanced degree was the best decision for me, thinking about long-term career perspective, because it doesn't feel like it at first, but careers are long and those decisions don't have to be immediate. So making a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain is something that I wanted to do. Additionally, being married and having to relocate, we had to make those decisions together, was also kind of a thing to make. And then also just feeling a bit of FOMO at work. I made manager and was very excited about that, about what that progression looks like. So even coming back 2 years later and trying to understand, but still working with my leadership team at Accenture to understand what those benefits are. So I had a lot of discussions with leaders at Accenture and folks who did their MBA, left, and then came back. And that also helps. So getting that outside data, but also kind of to Niall's original point, your careers and things change. So I actually thought I was going to get a PhD in environmental engineering, and that I'm kind of like realized that wasn't for me. So being flexible, I knew I wanted to get a master's, and this ended up being what I thought was the best fit for me. And also, quite honestly, work is hard. I like these 2 years off to kind of explore and not have that pressure of a demanding consulting career. So multiple things, but ultimately I think that this will be the best decision for me and my family over the long term.
It sounds like you were really proactive in planning out your steps, Lacy. But that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And willingness to be uncomfortable again, right?
Yes.
So if you could talk to your younger self, what would be that question that or what would you say to your younger self to help along that journey?
Yes, I think, Mary, some of the best advice that I have that you've shared that I received when I was a student, two things that I've kind of reiterated is that one, career is a marathon and not a sprint. I remember having that anxiety as an undergrad, just really trying to figure out what am I going to do? What is my job? But it all works out. And it's literally okay if it doesn't work out immediately. So even after school, I did not have a job right after. I think it took a couple months for me to find a role. And nevertheless, I'm at the same place as many of my peers who had a job immediately after school. In fact, I'm at an amazing place, actually. So I'm really happy about that. And I would have told myself to calm down. I have the rest of my life to work. So if these things don't work out immediately in the present, it's literally going to be okay. And also just being comfortable with discomfort. There's a level of discomfort that we can all tolerate, and just knowing what that is for you, I think, is important. Pain is something that I avoid, but discomfort is something that I lean into to acceptable levels. And it's in those opportunities, especially in consulting, where I jumped in and I didn't know anything about anything, where things actually worked out. And before I started doing the asset management work, I never would have thought that I would be speaking on panels or giving workshops on these very technical things. So lean into these spaces, and it's okay when you don't know. Generally, people are going to help support you and want to see you do well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Lacy. There's
Sure.
so much in your story that's inspirational for all of us, that planning, the willingness to go forward, try new things that you haven't tried before, put yourself out there, right? All these words, and everyone here who's listening today are seeing, some people who are on that journey right now. Thank you for sharing that, Lacy. And speaking about somebody who's been really purposeful in shaping her career, I've been honored to personally observe my own daughter's journey and how she constructed her direction and where she was going to go, very purposefully moving forward throughout her career. So I did invite her to share that story because it inspires me, and I think it'll inspire you. So Rachel, do you want to share with the group your journey?
Yes, and thank you everyone for having me today. As my mom said, I'm a planner. I decided at a very young age that I wanted to work in the hospitality industry. And so before I even graduated from college, I started working in hotels. I too experienced the pressure of feeling like I needed to get a job right away. To give you some context, I graduated in the spring of 2009, which might resonate with some folks on the line who are graduating in the midst of very uncertain times. I can totally relate to that and feeling this pressure of, well, if I don't take this job, what's going to be the next job? So anyway, I ended up graduating with a hospitality degree and landed a job at a great hotel. And then for the next decade, worked my way up within different hotel companies in the capacity of a sales manager. And I was constantly working towards that next promotion, focused on, okay, well, I'm here, but this is where I want to go. And essentially by 2018, I had secured myself a senior role within Lowe's Hotels. I was making great money. I had a great boss. Most people would think, okay, you should be content with that. But as I had always been, I was interested in, moving up, moving to the next thing. So the two possible promotional tracks that were presented to me was to move into a manager role where I would oversee a team of sellers, or get promoted to a global account director. And neither of these positions interested me, mainly because I'd always been a seller. I had managed an admin at one point. I did not find energy in that. It just wasn't the type of activity I enjoyed doing. And then the global account director, these were people that our customers called when there was a problem. So they were always putting out fires and, kind of handling upset customers. That did not interest me either. Additionally, I had personal financial goals. I'm in Chicago, so I really wanted to own my own place. Maybe it would have a private rooftop overlooking the skyline. I don't know. But I knew that it was going to be harder to do that in the industry I was in, just because I was familiar with the income. And then lastly, I was at a point where I was no longer growing. I was bored, to be honest. And, I could have stepped back. I could have let that job become mundane, collected my check, clocked in and clocked out. But really, all signs were pointing me in the direction of a change. And here I was at the beginning of my 30s thinking, okay, I've spent my entire career in hospitality. I got my degree in that. I feel pigeonholed to this industry. Admittedly, I was discouraged. I was anxious about, quote unquote, starting over. So I reflected a lot on what type of work I enjoyed doing. I knew that I liked selling. And then I just started to research from there, like what were the global trends? Where were the jobs? What industries were growing? Where was the money? I also researched best places to work and what types of benefits those companies offered. And then I actually sat down and made a list of what I was looking for in my next employer. So I was really intentional about trying to parse down, okay, what is my next step? All of this led me to the conclusion that I needed to move into technology. That's where the jobs were, that's where the money was. And that led me to a company called TravelClick, which ultimately provides SaaS software to hotels. So it's a great bridge of my existing skill set to, really helping me learn and grow this new industry, and pushing me in different ways. And then after about a year of working there, LinkedIn reached out to me and asked me to come sell their e-learning platform, which is obviously completely outside of anything I had ever done before. So I accepted the position, and LinkedIn was the perfect fit for me because it's an amazing company to work for. It's really pushed me. I've learned so much and grown in ways that I would never have if I would have stayed in my previous industry. And the best part is, now that I have that on my resume, I've opened so many more doors that, who knows what the next step will be. So that's kind of my history.
That's, well, awesome. Thanks for sharing with the group, Rachel. And if you could speak to your younger self, what would be your advice?
Yeah, so I think 3 points. One is, no matter how long you've been doing something or how long you've worked at a company or what you got your degree in, you can always learn something new. You can always make a pivot, and change is going to happen regardless of if you're looking for it or ready for it. So just try to embrace that and keep an open mind about your own potential. Don't limit yourself. Second, be selfish about what feeds your energy. I've seen so many people in my career who have taken a promotion because it was more money, more stature, but they didn't like actually doing the work. So I haven't seen this work out well. They either don't perform well, or they end up leaving shortly, a year after or so. It's just not really a good scenario. And then last, try to look at macro trends. When you're thinking about changing a job, or when you're thinking about taking your first job, think about, okay, what are the long-term projections for this industry? Did that particular company or industry do really well during the pandemic? Did they solidify their place in the market? So really, headline here is just don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to take risks. You guys have everything you need to succeed, and you can learn and you can grow.
Very encouraging. You're absolutely right. And I think you have to be intentional about it. Don't be afraid, just go for it. And speaking of that, in trying different things, I think there's also now a great interest in diversity and team building and nurturing of people. And our final speaker, Elizabeth, has a lot to say on this topic because she works with a fantastic mentor and supporter, Mr. Timothy Millwood, who we'll hear from in 2 months, but also from her own personal nurturing. I first came to know Elizabeth through work with her at Cummins as the leader of global enterprise charge of manufacturing and engineering systems. But with such great responsibility also comes great responsibility as a leader. And her team is just amazing. It had so many wonderful things to share about team building and nurturing of people. So Elizabeth, please share your story with us and share those examples. It'll be really inspiring. Oh, you're on mute.
And it also says that I have notes on another page, so I wasn't looking at this page. Therefore, it took a second.
We got it.
Cool. All right. So thank you, Mary. It's been a pleasure meeting you and working with you as well. I work with a lot of amazing peers as well as an amazing team. And this year's been a year of opportunities for just about anyone to excel, right? It's so many different requirements from such a broad skill set that we all had the opportunity to really lean in and take care of each other, right? I do want to point out that my systems partner is online, Rachel Lecrone. She's also an amazing person. I think have we heard from her already? I think this year, or
we're going into, yes, actually, Rachel did do her talk on a panel that was featured on the, it was the Institute of Asset Management panel presentation, which I can make available but I think that's the speaking event you were thinking of, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so if you get the opportunity, you should partake of that. It's an amazing set of folks on that panel. I really want to talk about two different concepts throughout my career. So I have been with 3 companies in my career, 2 before I came to Cummins, and I've been at Cummins now going on 21 years. So really has been a great ride. I've enjoyed it immensely, and it's a great place to work. So much so that I recommended it to my daughter, and she has actually started working at Cummins as well, and has just been flattened by the care that she's received as she's come into the company in the first couple of weeks. So in my career, I would say variety is the spice of life, right? Balancing a breadth of knowledge with promotion opportunities. I think Rachel was speaking about broad experiences leading you to be a more rounded person and have better opportunities and be that better candidate when growth roles or leadership roles become available as you reach the upper echelons of the company. You know, promotion can feel like recognition, right? And that you've completed an accomplishment. But moving too quickly throughout your career and just moving up without taking those opportunities to broaden your skill set and your knowledge base can really leave you stranded in one functional lane, right? Or if you're not working in a company that has many functional lanes, if it's more focused on one market, then it can leave you stranded in that company and with a glass ceiling that you just can't get past, right? So considering early in your career the opportunities to maybe take a lateral rather than that next promotion, the promotion may feel good. It may be a little bit more exciting, right? But taking the opportunity to get the breadth of experiences will leave you better set up later in your career. So in my case, I had the opportunity to move laterally a few different times at different points in my career, specifically at Cummins. So I moved from operations in manufacturing, so running the manufacturing process, to purchasing, right? Very different. Folks have talked about taking on something different, right? My background is in industrial engineering and math and statistics, so moving to purchasing was really outside my wheelhouse, but learned a lot, had the opportunity to work globally there. And from that role, I actually moved to manufacturing engineering, designing a plan and putting it in. Had a great opportunity after that. Both of those times, by the way, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's this opportunity over here. We think you would be good in this role." After that, moved on to some more manufacturing, went back to manufacturing, did plant leadership, had a great opportunity to move from plant leadership to functional leadership and had a global organization, got the opportunity to really grow that organization in different regions in the world, in China and India. That role I was in for 4 years, and that one I actually moved on, right? And chose to interview for the next role I had. When I went to that next role, I went back to purchasing actually. And after I went back to purchasing, I was leading one function for the whole globe, a process that Cummins runs, a strategic process, and really had the opportunity to get close to the vice president of purchasing at the time. Worked closely with him, moved up in that organization to work directly for him. And then he moved on and he had the opportunity to become the vice president of manufacturing, Tim Millwood, who Mary was introducing earlier. So he, not very long after he moved, he called me, he said, "Hey, Elizabeth, would you have interest in this position? I have this position open." So it's really critical as you go through your career, right, to set yourself up with a broad background, because I never would have gotten that last call to be an executive director for Cummins if I hadn't had all that opportunity to have a breadth of experiences across the business and sometimes taken a lateral role. And by the way, as Rachel mentioned, those lateral roles, I found them exciting. That's really what I wanted to do at the time. So give yourself permission to do that. If something excites you, take that role on and grow that breadth in your career. It will lead to opportunities to grow faster and grow more later. So how do you garner that tap on the shoulder? I don't know if the good old boys network translates in this generation, but what I do know for sure is that leadership in any company is a network, and winning the best opportunity depends on that network and knowing that network, knowing that you exist and being familiar with your work. So if you think about it, I may have a role open, me personally may have a role open that you're an incredible fit for. But if I don't know you exist, I can't reach out to you and let you know the position is available. So whether you're volunteering through fundraising at a company in order to get exposure to a broader set of people, or you're just doing networking, right? And you reach out and you tap the shoulder of the vice president of the supply chain and say, hey, I'd really like to have a one-to-one and get to know you and let you know what I'm working on. Or you're just taking the opportunity to take that extra project and get that exposure in order to create that work network and showcase your capabilities. The important thing is that you're networking and you're getting those connections in the company. So it's not waiting for some other network to figure out you exist. It's taking control of your own destiny, of your own career, and really reaching out and creating that network for yourself. So just to summarize my career, in the 20 years I've been at Cummins, I've held 9 roles. And beyond the obvious first interview, right, to be hired at Cummins, I've only interviewed for 2 roles out of those 8. So 6 of those roles, it was simply somebody saying, hey, I've seen what you can do. Do you want to do this role? I think you'd be really good at it, and we could use your expertise. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Networking is a big deal. It's such an amazing story, Elizabeth. I had a question come in here while you were talking about the role of mentors. I'm sure that you've had a number of requests for both probably to be a mentor, but also have reached out to other mentors. Can you talk a little bit about the role of mentors in that kind of a journey and how they should be levered?
Absolutely. Mentors are amazing, right? So my experience with having mentors, I did reach out a couple times and I had a couple really, really good mentors. I've always kind of used the rule that I don't want them to be specifically in my current chain of command, right? Just because you want to be able to be open. And if you're feeling uncomfortable about something, or like you may not be exactly doing something right, you don't want to say that to your boss, right? Or someone who's in your chain of command. So choosing someone that's not in your chain of command is probably good. And choosing someone that's diverse so they can really understand all the different things that you have going on is great. I wouldn't stick to just one mentor, right? Different people have expertise in different places. You can have a couple of mentors. Being a mentor, I will say it is one of the, it's my favorite thing about my job, right? I love to meet with people. I love to help them figure out what they enjoy. Probably the most common question I get is, what should I do next in my career? And my answer is, I have no idea what you should do next in your career, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about what you enjoy doing and what you're good at, and where you should be developing yourself, and we'll figure out what roles are best for you as we go through that conversation.
So true. Yes, absolutely. I'd like to open up the lines for a group conversation. Now that you've all enjoyed your lunch, now it's time to share it and talk about what we've learned today. What are your observations?
Hey, Mary, can I share one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody said, amazing, Elizabeth. You know, when you hear, when it's you, I just want to say it doesn't feel amazing, right? To a fault. Every time I've spoken, somebody says, oh, that is so inspiring. And I'm like, I don't feel inspiring, right? So we all have amazing stories, right? So change that byline in your head and know that your story is an amazing story. It just doesn't feel amazing to you because you did it, right?
I think that's excellent advice. I think oftentimes if you don't, seeing yourself through other people's eyes can, as they tell you what they see in you, is really helpful, I think, for helping you see more of yourself in a different way, right? Mentors can help with that.
And if I can add one more thing, I think Elizabeth made amazing points on mentorship. I know for me, I've been very intentional about getting mentors who are not like me. So I think it's super important to have a very diversified mentor network. Just like Elizabeth said, people who are in and outside of your group, people who might challenge and make you uncomfortable, really seek out those relationships because you never know what they can uncover. So for me, I started in engineering. I had a great network of engineers, but as I transitioned, I saw that I needed a more diverse network of people with professional and even ethnic and social backgrounds to get where I needed to go in my career as well. So I think it's very important to assert yourself and just be uncomfortable if people are not the typical folks with whom you're comfortable interacting with.
Hey, Mary, I think there was a question there. I just read it. How do you ensure managers recognize and tap into that breadth? You tell them, right? When you're doing one-to-ones, you should be having one-to-ones. That was a little bit of Indianian speak there at doing. When you're having one-to-ones with your leader or leaders, right? You say, hey, I've had this experience. And not only that, it's a great opportunity to say, I haven't had these experiences. I'd like to have that experience. And you're not expected to have had every experience in the world, right? It's okay to say, guess what? I don't know how to do that, but I'd like to learn.
I think that calls on us as leaders as well to be pretty intentional about who we're pulling onto our teams and to look for a diversity of skill sets, backgrounds, right, which are additional conversations that we're going to be having coming into the future here. What else? Anybody else want to share their stories or questions? No? Okay, well then I think what we'll do is we'll wrap this session for this month. And I want to thank all of our speakers for coming forward and being willing to share your stories. You know, it's brave, right? To come forward and talk about those things when you're not even certain that you're on the path that you want to be on, right? We're all still pathfinding in our own careers. But I hope that anyone who's watching the session were inspired by our speakers and will join us for our next monthly session, which this whole group will be coming together to talk about marketing yourself and branding yourself and creating the kind of perception that you want about yourself. So I hope you'll all be able to join us. Until then, take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Take care. Bye, everyone.